Hi, good morning everyone, and welcome to our first Proteum live webinar. Really appreciate you all taking time out of your diary this morning to join us. The webinar will be basically focusing on the capabilities of the OXE outboard diesel engine and our new power and partnership agreement. And also we'll be talking at the end about our new S.M.A.R.T technology. Today I'll be basically facilitating this event, and I am Nikki Yeoman, Head of Marketing here for Proteum, which is part of the SC Group. And your host today will be Neil Taylor, Proteum General Manager, who'll be basically talking you through this presentation. Basically, we're delivering this to you today due to COVID. As you all know, that many exhibitions have been cancelled, so we thought this was a great way to hopefully get in front of you today and take any of your questions. Hopefully you'll see to the right of the screen there is a little chat box. Please, we do encourage you to ask any questions throughout, but we will be coming up with a Q&A at the end, so please bear with us and we will respond to those questions at the end. I hope you all sort of enjoy this session, and we very much look forward to welcoming you today. And also we'll just jump on. So basically, as I've already mentioned, that Proteum is part of the SC Group. We are a marine distributor, providing marine diesel engines and support services. So we do have customers worldwide. Our main products are the Motorspode 1, OXE Diesel, which again we'll be speaking about today, the Alamarine Jet and the book. And also we do services. We have through life support, comprehensive inspections, customer overhaul solutions, engine repowers, spare parts, custom services and support partners. And we're also distributors for the products throughout UK and Ireland. So right now I'll hand you over to Neil.
Thanks, Nikki. And as Nikki said, thanks everyone for taking the time out and joining the meeting. I think there may have been a few confusions, but we are sort of scheduled for around an hour this morning. I don't want to bombard you with too much information that you're not going to be able to take on board, but I think there were confusions over the possibility of it running into 4 hours, but I don't think anyone expects someone to sit in front of their computer for 4 hours listening to me talk. It's no fun at all. As Nikki said, I'm General Manager for Proteum, and I'm very pleased to be able to be taking you through the Power and Partnership scheme today. We feel that it's a huge move forward in the marine industry, not just for Proteum, but for the whole of the industry. And we hope that you agree with us, but I really want this to be as much feedback as possible from you guys, that, you know, if you've got any questions, please do ask them and we'll do our best to answer them. But it's really to get your feedback and initial thoughts on the scheme as well. So I'm just going to start off quickly running through the OXE diesel outboard for those of you that might not. OXE was established in 2012, so they've been around for a while now, and the first diesel came off the line in 2014. So we've had engines running in service for around 7 years now. The engine is purely designed to be a commercial outboard, unlike the petrol outboards that are more geared around the pleasure market. These are designed and built purely for commercial industry, heavy users, long hours, and heavy duty cycles as well. So in those 7 years, there's over 800 engines now running out worldwide in various commercial applications. We do have some in pleasure applications as well, but not many, obviously. But it gives us that proven track record, I think, already in the industry, that we've been out there 7 years and these engines are in service and working for various customers around the world in various different environments. The engine was actually designed around the belt drive system, which we'll have a look at in a second, but it was originally designed as a belt stern drive, but then they realized that if they put a diesel engine on the top of it, that they could produce a diesel outboard and be the first in the market for that high power output, and that's where OXE was born. So just some of the USPs for the OXE. As I say, the diesel engine itself is actually a General Motors block, so it's got millions of miles on the road for a proven track record, well established, and obviously that means that parts availability is also very easy and reasonably priced as well. So I think that's a main USP, particularly for commercial customers, for ease of access of parts and the cost of servicing, etc. One of our biggest factors is the fact that we are 42% more efficient than petrol outboards. Makes a big difference to commercial customers running high hours. Obviously, that you're basically halving your fuel costs by running the OXE on the back instead of a petrol outboard. And also our service intervals are double the petrol engines, so half the amount of servicing as well. As I said, the belt drive technology has been patented by OXE. It enables us to transmit the torque of the diesel engine through the gearbox and through the prop without any bevel cut gears, without any dog clutches, without any cone clutches. So it makes it a much more robust system than conventional outboards. It is basically an inboard diesel engine just mounted on top of an outboard leg. And following on from that is also the closed cooling system. So it runs a coolant through the main block of the engine and then uses the salt water to cool that closed cooling system, the same as any conventional inboard diesel engine. But obviously that prolongs the life of the engine, but it also enables us to run calorifier takeoffs from it, so we can run cabin heaters and demisters off the engine. And then we also have our heavy duty hydraulic plated gearbox. So again, no dog clutch, no cone clutches to wear, very robust, similar to a ZF63 inboard diesel gearbox really. It makes for very smooth shifting, but also for joystick operation. If you're looking for a joystick for slow speed maneuvering, obviously it can bang in and out of gear without doing any damage to the dog clutches and bevel gears and things like that. So again, for high hours usage, ferries, workboats, anything that's shifting lots in and out of gear, it's an ideal solution for it. So that was just a brief description of OXE, and as I say, if anyone's got any questions, please do ask and I'll answer them at the end. But the main reason for us being here today is to talk about our Power in Partnership scheme. It is, as far as we're concerned, new to the industry. There's no one else in the marine environment that's offering this solution for commercial customers. But why are we doing it? Well, we feel that we have a great product in the OXE diesel outboard, and we do truly believe that it is a valuable asset to commercial customers, not just for the fuel savings and servicing costs, but also for the safety of being able to run diesel and the availability of diesel compared to petrol in the commercial marketplace. We know, talking from a lot of our customers, that they're having to go out to petrol stations to fill up jerry cans with petrol and bring them on site, which is obviously not ideal or safe. To be able to get a diesel bunkered tank in the workplace to be able to fill up from, and also if you're running other vessels with inboard diesels, to be able to use the same fuel, is obviously a huge benefit to the end user. But we're up against well-established competition, the likes of Mercury and Yamaha, Volvo, Yanmar, the likes that have been in the industry for decades, and that customers are used to using. Obviously, it's difficult to pull those sort of people away from the well-known brands within the industry. However, we do feel that there is a long overdue change in the marine industry. I think everyone's aware that generally the marine industry runs about 20 years behind all the other engineering sectors. I mean, the fact that we're still supplying mechanical engines, it speaks volumes to that extent, I think. So this same scheme has been used in other industries for decades, and we feel that it's time that the marine industry falls into line. And actually it's a shift in favour of the customer. So it is a revolution in the marine industry. So we are stuck in a chicken and egg situation, we feel. Which comes first? We're trying to develop OXE into the marketplace, and obviously for various reasons the customers are reluctant to commit to it, being a new product in the marketplace. But we are not the first to be in this situation. So we have a brief history lesson for you. So in 1965, a company called Bristol Siddeley developed a new jet engine called the Viper. Their customers agreed that it was being sold for a fair price and that it was a superior product to the other engines that were currently in the marketplace. However, no one was buying it. And the reason for that is the same as what we're finding in the marine industry, is that the existing engineering companies that were looking after the engines and the customers had stock of spares to support the product already in the marketplace. Their engineers knew how to maintain them. They were trusted, they knew that they worked, and they didn't want to take the risk on something different, even if they thought it was a better product. So what they did was, instead of selling the engine to the customer, they asked them to pay an amount per hour that they flew. Bristol Siddeley would then make sure that the engines were maintained and ran smoothly, and that meant that the customers no longer physically bought the engines, they bought flying time. This model was then adopted by Rolls-Royce, and I'm sure some of you have heard of this before. They purchased Bristol Siddeley, and the scheme became known as Power by the Hour. It also then it transmitted through the whole of the aviation industry and then into some of the heavier industrial sectors as well. But why was it so popular in that marketplace? It aligns the supplier's incentive more closely with the buyers. So if you're only paying for the engines when they're working, it incentivizes us to make sure that they're repaired quickly and efficiently and back in service, and limiting your downtime. It also increases the predictability for fleet customers where they've got multiple units running. They can work out what the cost is going to be over the lifetime of the engine given the hourly rate. And then finally, it spurs innovation by the supplier, because we're not able to make money selling expensive aftermarket sales and service. It incentivizes us to look at other areas that we can develop and help the customer, analytics and things like that we can monetize. So that was the history. The future, we feel, is our powering partnership, and this is our take on the scheme. So for the customer, it means no more high value purchases at day one. They're not purchasing the engines outright, instead paying a monthly cost based on the amount the engines are used that month. You can factor in all of those costs, so there's no unexpected costs or lengthy periods of downtime, by the fact that we're incentivized to make sure that the engines are back up and running quickly. But that also means now that you can utilize the diesel outboard rather than having to carry highly flammable petrol on board, and also, obviously, as I said, much more readily available and easy to access. I do want to stress that this is not a rental agreement or a lease agreement. This is powering partnership. This is a partnership between us and the end user. We want to help your business grow. We want to develop it as much as we can with you. So it's not a purely a lease agreement or finance scheme. So it is a partnership between Proteum and our customers. As I say, we want to work together with you to develop your business and make sure that the engines are reliable and doing what they should be doing and keeping you working. We're doing this by monitoring the engine via a remote login facility and also oil sampling at service intervals. So this enables us to predict any potential future failures before they happen, which means that more times than not, we can actually predict a failure and have the parts available to fix it before it causes any downtime, so that it's done on a planned service intervention rather than an emergency call out. And again, it just helps to limit that downtime factor and unknown quantity. So basically, the customer will pay for the install kit on day one. The theory behind this is obviously normally there would be some form of deposit payment, but we've done it through the installation kit. At the end of the contract, there is an option to either purchase the engine or carry on with a new contract. Either way, the rigging kit would stay in place, so it wouldn't need to be changed. It would just be the engines that were changed. You then pay a monthly figure based on the amount of use, and there is a minimum usage of 600 hours a year, which is why we've targeted this towards purely commercial customers. There are choices over the term of the contract, but generally we look at around a 5-year or 5,000 hour period, whichever comes first. So just a quick example, we have a 150 horsepower single engine boat running 1,000 hours a year over a 5-year, as I said. So the initial payment would be around that £5,300 mark for the rigging kit. The engines would be installed by us or one of our dealers, so there's no additional cost for the install. And then you pay for the first month in advance, as you would for a mobile phone contract or any other sort of subscription-based product these days. And then following on from that, you'd pay an hourly rate of £11 an hour for the boat, but you only pay it when the boat is actually working. That hourly rate includes all of the servicing and repairs for the engines over the term of the contract. So you're basically also achieving an extended warranty terms on the engine for that period of the contract as well. We have said excluding travel, because obviously not knowing where the vessel is could change. It would obviously be supplied by our dealers in the local area to support it, so the travel would be an additional cost on top, but we'd obviously make sure that we have a network in place to support any product that's out there, so that it's not going to be an extended travel time. So why do we feel that customers need this and why it's a benefit to them? And again, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this if you don't agree with any of these points or feel differently about it, but we feel it definitely gives a positive cash flow for the customer. No initial purchase price. There is also no need to carry spares or put them into stock, because we will be supporting the engines, and also then no unforeseen outgoings if a starter motor fails or turbo or whatever it may be. It's all covered under that hourly rate, so there's no hidden unforeseen costs going out. They get to use the diesel without the increased buy price of the OXE. So again, ease of access, running costs, etc. And then also maximising the uptime of the vessel. So the use of the remote monitoring system really does aid in that. It enables us to see exactly what's going on. It's all automated. We'll have a look at that a bit later on. But also by doing so, we're looking at trying to increase the service intervals over a period of time as well, depending on the environment that it's working in. And again, you only pay for the engines when they're working and earning you money. So I just wanted to look at a couple of comparisons. Whatever we've done with the petrol or the inboard diesels, we've done to the OXE to try and keep it as fair as possible. Again, these are based on local prices, fuel costs of 50p a litre for diesel and 54 for petrol, which we find is about right for most customers, but once you've claimed back the VAT and the duty, etc. So we've just taken doing 600 hours a year, which is the minimum usage. I hope this is readable and you can interpret it okay. Basically, the left-hand side of that table is the petrol outboard. The right-hand side in the green is the OXE diesel. So we've looked at the cost of day one of the initial purchase of the engine and installing it on the back of the boat. As you can see there, 16,000 versus 5,950 for the power in partnership. And going through to 60 days, so 2 months into the contract, or the use of the engines for the petrol because of the cost of the petrol itself, as well as the servicing costs, etc. You know, you're up to nearly 19,000 as opposed to 8,000 for the power in partnership. It's also worth bearing in mind that there's probably around 4 hours of downtime for the service to be carried out as well. And then going on to day 730, which is obviously 2 years into it, you can see there that there's still a big difference between the petrol at 49,000 and the OXE at just under 37. We are looking at developing new systems for the OXE to be able to change the lower oils while the boat's in the water, which means that it will reduce even further the requirement to lift the boat out to do the servicing and change the lower oil, as you would need to with a petrol outboard. So that 2,520 in the boat lifts column will drop to around 420 instead. And of course, this doesn't cover any breakdowns or repairs, because actually the petrol outboard would have been out of warranty from day 610 onwards, because you only get around 1,000 hours of warranty with petrol outboards. And this is why a lot of customers tend to replace them not long after that period of time, because they start to become unreliable. And I think that's another important thing to bear in mind when we look at this table, is obviously day 731 or day 611, when the engine fails and you need to replace it, that's at your cost with the petrol. Whereas if we had a similar situation with the OXE, the engine would be replaced free of charge. You wouldn't see any extra incur. But obviously we're not just up against petrol outboards. We've also had a look at an inboard diesel as well. So for this example, I've taken a Volvo Penta D3 on a stern drive. And as you can see, it's a very similar story as far as cash flow goes, from the initial purchase right the way through to the second year. You're always in a positive outcome with the powering partnership, and even more with the diesel inboard. I think a lot of the engines at that size, again, are geared around the pleasure market, particularly when it comes to Volvo. So you only get 500 hours of warranty, whereas with the 150 OXE, you get unlimited hours for 12 months. But obviously that extends through to the term of the contract as well. So there's no limitation on hours. We are going to put this presentation available online at the end, so if there's anything you want to refer back to, then obviously you'll have access to that and can refresh your memory with these tables. And that's a lot of information to take in a short period of time. So as I said earlier, one of the incentives was the spur of innovation by the supplier. We've worked with partners at AST to develop a remote monitoring system for the OXE. Again, this is one of the only systems in the marine industry that works the way it does. We've entitled it our Smart Engineer for service monitoring and remote tracking. This basically is like having an engineer on board 24/7. So it uses a 4G network to send the information from the CAN bus network on the engine back to an online portal, where we can then interpret it and monitor the data. The majority of this is all done autonomously, so it doesn't need somebody sat in front of a screen looking at it. What we've done is we've set up green, amber and red zones for all the tolerances, for all the parameters that we're monitoring. And if anything goes outside of the green zone, we get an automatic alert to let us know that something could be going wrong. So this is not just about monitoring temperatures, but we're monitoring the load on the engine, fuel pressures, fuel rates, turbo pressures, everything, so that we can ascertain whether the turbochargers are beginning to wear or stick, or fuel pumps are blocking, or whatever it may be. It enables us to monitor that engine anytime it's being used by the customer. If for any reason it does go out of signal, there is a memory in the box on the boat that will store up to around 2 days worth of running, and as soon as it comes back into signal, it beams it all back to the portal. But again, even if we don't pick up an issue and we get a phone call from the customer, it does enable us to go in and look at the historic running of the engine to see if we can ascertain what could be the cause, so that the engineer turns up on site fully versed and knowing what to do. So we have a screen in our office just as a visual representation for our service manager that sits there. You can see there that there's various green and red lights. So when the engines are running, they turn green. If there's any issues or faults that occur, they turn red. So there's 2 rows there. The red ones that you can see are where the engines aren't running. The line below it is the fault codes. So it's just a bit of a visual representation for anyone that's in the office that can see the boats that are out running and working that day. So just a quick screenshot of how the portal works, just to show RPMs and pressures and temperatures and everything on the engines. And as I say, it is like having an engineer on board 24/7, because it does enable us to interrogate the data and see what's going on. So just an example of an alert that we had come through where the engine started to overheat. This was a boat on the Thames that was running. They were pushed up on the bank and sucked up some silt into the seawater strainer, and it obviously restricted the raw water flow through the engine. So we were able to alert the skipper on board. He cleared the silt before it caused any problems, or before even the alarm was triggered on the boat. So it just goes to show that the system works. But also we can have monthly or weekly reports depending on the amount of hours that the boat's doing. These can come out to the customers, to the skippers, to the engineers, whoever in the company wants to receive them. And basically this can give a breakdown of the use for that period of time. So it shows the number of hours, the fuel that it's burnt, average litres per hour, but also indicates when the next service is due as well. We've also added in a small box there in the blue, which just highlights the fact that maybe if they're running it hard for long periods of time, if they were to throttle back, they could also save fuel. And we feel this is valuable information for fleet operators to be able to keep an eye on how all the boats are being used when they're being used by various operators. Obviously, it's very difficult to keep track of how people use them, but for those in management positions, it's obviously beneficial to see that the engines are being used correctly and efficiently. And I think these are also customizable. So we've changed this report for this particular customer because one thing that we noticed by doing the remote monitoring is that they were spending long periods of time at idle. So originally when we found this, they were spending nearly 75% of the hours a month at idle because the operators weren't switching the engines off. Now obviously that makes a big difference to that customer because not only are they burning fuel, but they're also increasing the amount of times they have to carry out a service when the engines aren't actually doing any work. They're just sat there ticking over out of gear. So we highlighted this to the customer. They managed to speak to the operators of the vessel, and now they've managed to reduce it down to around 40% of the time, and we're hoping to be able to bring it down even lower than that as well in the coming months. And it also shows there that the fuel savings against the petrol outboard equivalent, depending on how they use it. So from our side, it enables us to produce these graphs as well so that we can monitor over time. So the horizontal axis there is the months that we've been monitoring these engines. So we can see there 9 months worth of data. It enables us to look at all the various parameters that we're looking at to see whether they are staying in line with where they should be. Obviously, if the turbo was starting to wear and we were losing boost pressure, we would see the lines drop down. You know, same with fuel pressures and things like that when we're looking at fuel pressures, but it just gives a very good and quick visual representation of how the engines are running to enable us to highlight any potential problems before it happens. But we're not stopping there. We feel that there's still room for improvement. As I say, with the monitoring and the oil conditioning, we are looking at being able to extend the service intervals over a period of time to again reduce the amount of time that the boat's out of service for carrying out maintenance work. We're also designing a system to be able to change the lower oils in the water so that the boat doesn't need to be lifted out, saving costs for boat lifts out and again time. And OXE are also working on a new model of engine to reduce the weight of the 150 and 200 horsepowers, which obviously makes it a lot more suitable for smaller boat repowers and things like that, where you're running smaller petrol engines. And then we're also trying to develop more hybrid and electric options as well going forward. Obviously diesel at some point will have its day, but we're also looking at possible biofuels and other areas that we could use with the OXE to reduce costs and carbon emissions and everything else to go with it as well. So I feel I may have rushed through some of that, so apologies if I went too quickly, but hopefully there are some questions from people that we can run through.
Yeah, we haven't got any questions at the moment, Neil, but I have put up that if anybody does actually have any questions post this webinar, then to email Neil directly. So I'm sure he won't mind getting an influx of questions after this. And if anyone's got a pen and paper to hand, if you just want to jot Neil's email address down, it is on the chat box, but it is Neil, Neil .Taylor, TAYLOR @proteum.co.uk. We'll just give it a few minutes just to see if you do have any questions. But thanks, Neil. That was a thoroughly great presentation. I personally didn't think it was too quick. I thought it was a nice momentum going through, a well documented presentation. So I hope all the attendees actually felt that was valuable and got something out of it. Also, sorry, Neil, if there isn't any questions, it would be great also to just have your feedback, as this is new to us, and this is the first webinar we've done, and we would like to continue running webinars during the course, certainly for the rest of this year and onwards. So if you've got any feedback to add, then again, please drop Neil an email, and he'll obviously pass that on to me, and then we'll collaborate on how we can improve these going forward.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing I think I'd just like to go back on is the fact that obviously, you know, yes, this is new to this industry, but actually it's a well-proven scheme in other similar areas, and I think we're in an environment now, where people do have to look more carefully at their cash flow situation. We've always said with OXE, it's a great product, but it comes with a higher cost initially. And it doesn't matter whether the benefits are there. You know, we have total cost of ownership tools in place that can show that, you know, the customer can recoup that initial investment over anything, you know, around sort of 10 to 12 months time for the higher usage customers. But it's no good if they haven't got the cash there to purchase the engine in the first place. And I think this is a huge benefit to those customers where they're looking at potential problems with CapExes coming out the other side of COVID and things like that, that we feel that this will benefit them hugely and help them save money as well. You know, it basically means that if you're putting £100 a day in your boat to run it, you're now putting £50 a day in the boat to run it. It makes a big difference very, very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a really valid point. Just to let everybody know as well that probably mid next week we will have a copy of this online on our website, which is proteum.co.uk, on our video section. So again, if there are any questions that you do feel that you would like to speak to Neil directly about post this session, you don't actually want to post today, then just drop Neil an email. Again, just for everybody, it's neil.taylor@proteum.co.uk. I think it's probably worth just wrapping up now, as there's no questions come in, and we've sort of carried on for another extra few minutes. But personally, from me, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody. Really do appreciate your time today. And any added points, Neil, before we go?
No, that's it. I think just thanks for your time, and yeah, just let us know if you've got any questions or need any further information.
Thank you, everybody. Keep well, keep safe.
Thanks very much.
Bye.